This episode of the Jesse T Show is brought to you by 46 and 2 Wealth Partners. This year, many people have lots of money questions. Finding the right information can be tough, and more importantly, finding someone that you like and have confidence in is even tougher. If you'd like to keep more of your money, and more importantly, if you'd like to stop trading time for money and live the life you deserve, contact 46 and 2 Wealth Partners today. Right now, Jesse T Show listeners will receive a free 15-minute phone call that will leave you with at least one idea on how to keep or make more money. Text promo code Jesse T Show to phone number 202-301-4503. John, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jesse. It's always good to chat with you.
It's a pleasure, man. You know, we connected many moons ago, I want to say in 2010, working for a payroll company. And, you know, we've had our own individual careers since then, and we've reconnected, man. So I just wanted to catch up with you a little bit and hear what's going on in your world and what you're working on, because I know you're doing some pretty interesting things in the world.
Yeah. Interesting is a word for it. I think like most folks that end up in sales, we end up in sales because we're driven to go out and have relationships with people, right? One-on-one connections with folks. And, you know, something that I think I experienced anyway was I think I can get bored doing the same thing for too long. And I feel like that's true for you too. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like every time I talk to you, you're working on something amazing and new. But yeah, you know, we talked about this earlier too, the idea that I feel like I went into sales because I was a serial entrepreneur, and you can be a serial entrepreneur and be really bad at it.
Yes.
So, I mean, like I like video games, but I lose a lot, you know?
Right. Are you playing these days? Have you been able to get around to playing games, or you're kind of too busy?
You know, that's the thing. When you like something, you make time for it. So it's one of those things where it's been tougher in the last year to really spend any quality time playing games, only because we recently had a daughter. She's now, I guess, 19 months old in a couple of days. Oh, no, she's 19 months old as of yesterday. I just looked at the counter.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't believe time flies as fast as it does. Every time I look up, it's been another year. So.
It goes by super quick. So when you do carve out time and do make time, what kind of games are you into?
Well, recently I've been into games that I can play in short stints because I know I can't commit, 4 hours to an epic story, which is frustrating because I think of video games a lot like television, right? There's different categories of it there. And this is something that people that don't play video games don't get, is that there's games that are very story driven. You get engrossed in them. You want to know what happens next, and you don't care about the actual act of playing so much as the act of following along. Those are games I turn it down to easy mode and just like, let's see what happens next.
Yeah.
And then there's like competitive games where it's like online multiplayer. So I got suckered into Rainbow Six Siege for a long time. I've been having fun with Call of Duty recently. Just because it's a game you can pick up for like 20 minutes, and then you can just hit escape and call it a day and move on. So yeah, it's been nice.
We need that escapism in all different forms, man, especially when you're running companies and you're everything to everybody and you're a family man and you got your own interests and things you're working on. So yeah, brother, talk a little bit about your path with your entrepreneurial journey. Cause I know that you came from corporate like many of us did. Were you inspired in corporate based on like your experience and what you saw that you could do it on your own? Did you have an entrepreneurial history as a kid with your family? Like, where did that stem from? And talk about your first venture, here a few years ago.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of little experiments in entrepreneurship. So it actually goes all the way back to being a kid. I think everyone's career at some point comes out of their childhood. What they want to do. So when I was a kid, I was into computers and I was into my parents. I mean, those are the things you're into when you're a kid sometimes. And my father owned a little alarm company, and then he sold, like, doing alarm installation. So I think ADT, He was the guy that ADT contracted to put the alarm in your house. And then, he found that that business was fine, but he could make more money just selling the contracts to someone else. And so eventually he sold the company, his little tiny Apple alarm company, to ADT, and just went into sales and made more money doing it for less work. And then I watched him throughout my childhood being a successful, what I would call an enterprise sales rep.
Yeah.
So he was an independent contractor. He was, traveling to these big conferences. He was going all over the United States. And he was selling something that I don't think, and anyone that listens to your podcast that's in this industry might judge me for saying this, but I think it's a bit of a dying breed. It was statements. So when you get a bill from a big company, they outsource the printing and distribution of that to a third-party company. And his job was to find those contracts, and they were selling pennies per paper. And it was all about being able to take a database of who had what products and figuring out how to upsell people on their bill. So you get a bill from John Deere, which I think was one of their clients that he worked with over the years. So you get a bill from John Deere, and it was like, hey, you have this tractor. Have you considered this attachment? They'd print that in the corner. And that kind of smart logic was a game changer for the bill printing industry. And now, a lot of this has gone electronic. So that industry's still there, but it's pivoted quite a bit. So, with that as the background, when I went into college, I thought, okay, well, I'll do computers. I like computers. I like messing around with them. I used to go to garage sales and buy old broken down computers, and I'd take the pieces out of them and I'd build one until it worked. And, this was obviously, it was the cheapest possible computer on the planet. So we're talking about, this is in the mid 90s. Everyone's got Windows 95, Windows 98, and I'm putting together DOS computers, because that's what I could afford. So when I went into college, I said, well, I know how to fix computers. I'll fix computers on the side, and I'll major in IT. So that was what I did. I did some programming classes at the very beginning of college, and I started a company called Frankenstein PC Repair. We bring your PC back from the dead.
Love it.
Right?
Love it.
Well, and the idea, I put posters all over campus, because what was happening was my friends knew I could fix a computer. So I was getting calls all the time from friends of friends that heard I could fix their computer. And they were saying, hey, can you fix my computer? And I was doing it as a favor. And I said, this is silly. I should get paid, which I think is what every entrepreneur should say to themselves whenever they find themselves doing the work, even if it's out of passion. Like, I enjoy doing it, but it didn't make sense for me to do it pro bono. So I put up these posters all over campus, and I started getting calls. And I started getting calls not from students. I was getting calls from professors and their friends. And I would drive to these people's houses with no business license. With all I had was a business card that at Walmart you can get business card printer paper where they pop out into business cards.
Yeah.
And I had a pirated copy of Adobe Photoshop where I put together a little Frankenstein PC Repair logo. I had a Google Voice phone number, which at the time, I think it was even called something. It was before Google Voice bought it. I think it was Ring Central or something. No, it was not Ring Central. It had another name before it got acquired. Ring Station? I don't remember. But, the idea was, here's a separate phone number so that when you called it and I was in class, you'd hear, thank you for calling Frankenstein PC Repair. We bring your PC back from the dead. Please leave the phone. All right. So I had this whole thing put together. And, and I had a website, but the website, I was too cheap to buy a website. So it was a blogspot.com free website where I put a Google form from Google Sheets, right? And I would just get these little pings on my phone. Somebody added something to your Google Sheet, and it was a request to go to someone's house to fix their computer. And I'd show up, I'd fix it, I'd make $100, and I'd leave.
Yeah.
I hate to admit this, but I was, I was a college student with no business experience, which meant everything I did was wrong.
Yeah.
All the computers I fixed, I'm pretty sure I put various pirated versions of Windows on them when we had to reinstall Windows, right? It's like, call me back if this gets out of date and you need to fix it. And like, I'll take care of it pro bono if something goes wrong. But that's what you do when you have a very limited option, right? I didn't have extra money laying around to go out and I was still a college student full time, right? But it was essentially beer money, or in my case, gratuitous amounts of pizza money,
Crushing some pizza in college like most of us did. So that sounds pretty interesting that you're able to take this passion and skill set that you developed over the years and be able to monetize on it, especially in a very early stage of your life where, there's some college kids that have some hustle, but there's a lot of college kids that don't. And a lot of college kids are, chasing, partying and not really just trying to get by with their grades and like looking at other things. But you actually kind of had this innate built-in DNA probably come like from your dad and then also from yourself, where you essentially just started to learn how to build a business and make all the mistakes up front, which is the best way to learn how to build a business so that you can actually learn through experience.
Yeah. After my first year of college, I met this really attractive woman. Actually, I met her in the first year of college, and she was a marketing major. And I said, I think I'm going to become a marketing major.
Like
and so
many a tale, people chasing tail literally will change their whole life.
I did. I changed my whole life, and 4 years later, I married her, and now we've been married. I think we had our 10-year anniversary recently. It's been,
Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And what was interesting about that was I realized that computers were fine, but at the end of the day, I was more interested in the business part of it than the computer part of it. And when I came out of college, Maria and I picked a random place to live in the world. And this is where we didn't put enough thought into it. We said, where do we want to live? We have the freedom of going anywhere, but we have no money, right? And I said, all right, I got this company, but it's just flyers on walls. I could keep doing this anywhere. What if I made that my full-time job? So we picked Tampa, Florida for two reasons. One, because I have distant relatives in Tampa, Florida, people that I don't hang out with, people that I don't have to see, and they have no obligation to see me. But if our car breaks down, there is a number we can call and a stranger will come pick us up, someone that we are distantly related to. But two, because if you go on Google and they have a Google Analytics little thing, you can see search results in different parts of the world. Tampa, Florida was the number one city in the world, in America anyway, for the search term computer help. So I figured lots of old people, lots of computers breaking down. Let's go there and start my computer repair company back up. And that's what we did. And we got there and we discovered very quickly that health insurance is so expensive and the amount of work required to scale that up. It was possible, but not as quickly as we needed it to happen in our lives to be comfortable. And that's when I looked back at my dad's career and said, well, he went to sales from entrepreneurship. I should look at that path as an option. Yeah. And so I started looking at sales opportunities, and nobody would hire a kid fresh out of college with no sales experience into a real sales job, right? And this was right after the 2008 housing collapse. And in Tampa, Florida, Florida is really propped up by the housing market. People buy and build houses in Florida.
Decimated probably more than most, for sure.
They got killed. Yeah. I mean, nobody was buying these. There were entire golf course communities that were abandoned.
Yeah,
just beautiful, brand new $300,000 homes, which in Florida, $300,000 homes are nice homes, versus San Diego or something, where that doesn't get you anything. And they were just empty, like weeds growing through the windows. So we got there, and I decided to look at a sales job, and nobody would hire me at first. And so I went to a guy that had a print and marketing company. I don't remember how I found him. I think I was just looking for company owners online, and I found this guy. And I showed up. I was cold calling, not being a salesperson yet, not having really any sales experience, but I knew how to pick up a phone and call a stranger. So I called him and I said, "Hey, are you looking for a salesperson? Let's talk." And he said, "Well, no, I don't know. Maybe I'll hear you out because you called me out of the blue, and clearly you've got some drive." So I show up at this guy's small shop. He's got like 5 employees, and he agrees to take me on. I told him I would work only for commission. I'd work on a draw on commission. I needed some money now, but it would be a draw. So that means that unless I sold over a certain amount, he would never pay me more than get ready for this, the $300 a week I negotiated for a full-time job. Right. We're rolling in the day.
Maybe rent money for the month total, like $1,200. Yeah,
exactly. Well, my wife was also looking for a job. Let's point that out. We just shown up to Florida. I did that for maybe I want to say 3, 4, or 5 months.
Yeah.
And I started to get some traction. I started to get some sales. Now this guy had no sales management in his bones, right? So what did I do for sales? I had to build my own CRM, was an Excel spreadsheet that I color coded based on the hotness of the lead.
I've been there.
Right. The database was a list of clients that he had bought this company, and these were clients that had bought from his company 10 years prior. Sure. So half the numbers are dead. The other half, the owners died, and the new company owner, no longer doesn't know who we are. So, but it was a list, it was numbered. And he was involved in BNI, which is really big in Florida. And for those of you who aren't familiar with BNI, it's Business Networking International. The idea is you go into a group of 30 to depending on the size of the group, like anywhere from 5 to 30 to 40, maybe even 50 people. And each person in the group is in a different industry. And you're supposed to refer business within the group and only do business with folks in the group. And the idea is you buy into this, and then you get all these trusted referrals. Because if you're not doing your job, someone in the group will basically tell everyone else, "Wow, that guy kind of stinks. Don't use him," even though he's in the group. So the idea is because you're referring each other constantly, there's a level of trust innately that comes with being in that group. And they have a lot of mixed emotions about the pros and cons of that networking organization. And that's not what I'm going to talk about. But but it gave me something. I was going to the owner was overworked, and so he was having me fill in for him at this BNI group he had signed up for in downtown Tampa. And one day I walked in, I sold my first big deal. It was to the college there in Tampa, and I had sold them, I want to say it was like $3,000 worth of folders. Right, I was so excited about this, and I was coming back to get my first commission check. He paid me every Friday, and I was like, I'm ready to get my commission check. And he calls me on my way in and says, look, we're kind of tight on cash flow this week, so I'm going to have to wait to give you your check until Monday. And I said, oh, that's sad to hear. I'm going to not come in today. I'm going to work on Monday. Once you resume paying me, I'm not going to continue working for free. So on Monday, I come back to the office, and when I pull up, there are men taking equipment out the back, repossessing the shop because the owner had failed to pay some debts.
Wow.
And the company was gone. And that check never came to me, unfortunately.
What was the commission you were expecting on that?
Oh, it wasn't a ton of money. It was like less, I want to say it was like less than $1,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was, but it was my first check that was more than the draw.
And it was your first like big sale, and you're excited, and you wanted to cherish that and like celebrate that victory and get your reward for it. Like you hustled. Yeah.
So the thing is that Wednesday was our BNI group, and I showed up at the BNI group anyway. And I said, you get at BNI, what they do is everybody gets 30 to 60 seconds, depending on the size of the group. This group is very large, so we only got 30 seconds each. And you have to, pitch what you want that week. And I stood up and I said, this week I'm for sale. My company's bankrupt, and I'm a sales guy who clearly you've seen show up every day. Who wants me? Taking all bids. And I got pulled aside by a couple of folks after the meeting, and I ended up getting offered essentially two sales jobs, one with ADP. I'm sorry, one with, I should back up. I was interviewed by ADP, and I was interviewed. I had three companies that were at play, essentially: ADP, Paychex, and Brown & Brown Insurance. All three of them hire people with little to no experience and do a bunch of training, which is great for where I was in my life. Brown & Brown offered me a job, but they wanted me to start a month later. Paychex offered me a job and wanted me to start the next week. So I went with Paychex. Now, I bring up ADP because I had an interview with ADP first. And my wife, I love Maria so much, but she gave me the worst advice I'd ever heard. She said, I was about to leave. I was putting on my little suit. I was getting ready. And Maria looked at me and said, now, John, you can sometimes be a little pushy, and it doesn't rub people the right way. Please be nice to this interviewer. Please don't burn the bridge by being too salesy. That's what she said to me. And I was like, don't be salesy. That's what I was thinking. Just win this guy over with my positive attitude.
Yeah.
And I do my interview, and I'm walking. I said, so what do you think? What's the next steps in this process? How do we proceed? And he said, John, you're a really nice guy, but I don't think you're salesy enough for this. I don't think you've got the drive to go out and actually push for, you're not asking uncomfortable questions. And I was like, son, and by the way, it's been like 13 years, and my wife still like feels sick about that. Because when I told her that's what they told her, she was like, no. And this is where the sales side of me comes up. So my response was, and this was the only interview I had lined up at this point. I didn't have Brown & Brown and Paychex at the table yet. But when the ADP, so when I first applied for the Paychex job, I had an upcoming interview for ADP that day. And then I bombed the ADP interview. And when I walked into my Paychex interview later in the week, they said, oh, and you're interviewing with ADP? And I'm like, why, yes, I am interviewing with ADP. And I didn't say, oh, I totally bombed that interview and they're never going to hire me. All they heard was, oh, you're in discussions with our competitor. We got to snatch this guy up. Yeah. That's why they offered me a job the next week versus waiting a month. And it was true. I was in an interview process. It just happened to end poorly.
That's right.
And what was funny to me was the two managers that interviewed me sat across the table and said something that I've thought about ever since. They said two things to me that I've thought about a lot. One was they said, how do you feel about selling a commodity? We're the same as our competitors. You're selling, but how do you feel about selling a commodity? Which I thought was a weird thing to say. And I gave them some line about how I thought Paychex was the best company on the planet. But it was weird that they were thinking of themselves in that light. The other thing they said to each other while I was sitting there listening was, this guy doesn't have the sales experience required to be successful in this job, but we can teach sales methodology. And they said to me, we can teach sales strategy. We can't teach motivation.
Right.
Right. We can't teach drive. So that's how they offered me the job. And I got offered the worst sales job possible at Paychex, which is a territory ready rep, which means we don't even have a spot for you to sell. They're protected sales territories. So everything you sell gets split with somebody else. And then maybe one of these suckers will quit. Luckily, a lot of people were quitting from that office. So it wasn't too long until I had a sales territory. But unfortunately, the guy who quit had the sales territory in the middle of the woods. So the way that sales territories work is the smaller the territory, the better. Right? And it's counterintuitive, but they based on the number of businesses in that sales territory. So a downtown Tampa territory might be one zip code because it's so dense. You can walk to 100 doors in an hour.
Yeah.
My territory was 2 counties, and it had a state park in the middle of it. It was an hour to the bottom of my sales territory by car and another hour to the top of the sales territory, which meant if I wanted to go knock on doors, I was getting in my car between every appointment. I was driving 5 or 10 minutes between every door knock. It meant that my sales process had to be vastly different from someone in downtown. And it also meant that I was in the country, right? The nature coast. And what I learned very quickly is that it is a relationship sale, much more of a relationship sale in the country than it was in downtown.
For sure.
They weren't talking to 3 vendors. They were talking to me.
Yeah. I
was the only one at the table, me versus what they're already doing. And the way I found success in that role was the same way I went back to my entrepreneurial spirit. I thought, what can I do that's different? And I found 2 things I could do that were different in that role. One was there was a time clock system that nobody else liked. They called it, I want to call it the PST 1000, the Paychex Smart Time 1000, right? And what the PST 1000 was an isolated time clock. It was a piece of hardware you stick on the wall. And all of the software was not cloud-based. It wasn't on the internet. It was in the clock.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do anything with this, with this time clock, you had to plug it into your network, and then you had to log in through the IP address into the time clock to download the files. And it's not very complicated if you're familiar with computers and networks a little bit. But my clients were floor installation guys, and I was talking to a guy that worked from home and would go on roofs and hired. These were not people that were technically savvy folks. They didn't need to be for the kinds of work they were doing. And so what I found was that my peers in the office could sell the clocks, but couldn't close it because the clients would get the clocks and they couldn't set them up, and nobody from Paychex would help them, and they would give up and return the clocks.
Yep.
So I said to my peers in the office, I said, everybody here, I know this clock inside and out. I took one home with me. I learned it. I played with it for hours. I went through all the documentation. And I said, I am an expert on the time clock. Anytime you sell one of these clocks, have me come in and implement it, and I'll take 50% of the sales revenue as a thank you. So I was setting out 5 or 6 of these clocks a week, and half my sales quota was coming in from these time clocks.
Wow.
Right? And then the other thing I did was workers' comp in Florida had a problem. So a big market for payroll is what's called a PEO, a professional employer organization in Florida. The reason why is this was after the housing collapse. There's a lot of roofers out there. If you're working on a roof and you fall off the roof and you file a workers' comp claim against your company, your back might be out for 10 years. They might be paying hospital bills for 10 years.
Yeah.
So insurance for workers' comp was very expensive. After 2008, a bunch of roofers got laid off from these construction companies. And what did they do? What would you do if you were a roofer? You had one skill and your company shut down.
Yeah.
You go out, you freelance.
Yeah.
Right? I'll go fix people's roofs. I'll post an ad here locally. That's the one thing I know how to do. And the thing is you would get shut down if you didn't have a policy. You had to have an insurance policy to legally keep your roofing license, to be a licensed roofer. Well, nobody in their right mind would write a roofing insurance policy for a one-man roofing company where the whole company loses all their money and now you're paying out claims for 10 years if that guy falls off the roof. So the state of Florida has what's called a monopoly on their workers' comp market. The state sets the rates. You cannot, as an insurance broker or an agent or whatever, the insurance companies can't raise the rates for high-risk employers beyond what the state allows them to. So the end result is insurance agents said, hell no, we're not going to write that. See you later.
Yep.
Right? So what we discovered was that a lot of these companies were going to these PEOs. And the idea with a PEO is the PEO hires you, Mr. Roofer, And then you are not an employee. You're not a small business anymore. You're an employee of a big company, and your small company leases. They borrow you. They pay a rate to lease you back from the PEO. It's kind of complicated, but the end result is technically the insurance belonged to this giant company with thousands of employees, and they could get an insurance policy, even though they had a high-risk pool of workers. The downside is it was insanely expensive. I mean, a one-man company is paying $10,000 a year for their payroll and workers' comp. $10,000 for a guy making $30,000.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
But yeah, so the other option was the Joint Underwriting Association of Florida. You could go to Florida directly, and you could say, hey, Florida, I want you to write me an insurance policy directly because no one else will take me. And they have to write you an insurance policy.
Wow.
But there were two drawbacks. You had to pay 2 years of that policy's admin fees up front. It was expensive. And if you went to a PEO, you just paid every payroll, like a percentage every. If you didn't make any money, you didn't pay any money. Great, right? So one, it was expensive up front. And two, you still needed an insurance agent to put their name on the form. And nobody wanted to deal with this complicated government process that paid close to no commission, right? So what I found out was that, I found out that the state of Florida, if you go to the Joint Underwriting Association, I went on there trying to figure out everything I could about it. And I found Paychex's logo on the bottom of the website. No other payroll company's logo was on that website. I called Paychex Corporate and I said, what the heck? Why is your logo on the state of Florida's insurance website? And they said, oh, well, we have a special negotiation with the Joint Underwriting Association. And if a Paychex client goes on the JUA, the government insurance, they don't have to pay the full 2 years. They only pay 6 months up front. And then they go on a pay-as-you-go workers' comp plan, which means if they don't work, they don't pay. I said, holy crap, how does nobody know about this? This is huge. This is like, I've lost so many sales because of workers' comp. And you're telling me we're the only company that can do this? And so I found some insurance agents willing to write JUA plans, and I was killing it from all these workers' comp agents sending me business. And I, being a dreamer, I said, there is more to this than me selling business. I said, I'm going to start an insurance agency that just sells workers' comp through the JUA, through Paychex clients. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to have a website to automate everything. I'm going to have them go online when they can't get insurance. And I'm going to spend my days I'm going to go from office to office at Paychex. And I'm going to tell those folks, hey, do you have a deal that you can't close because of workers' comp? Send them to me, the Paychex partner of choice. Now, Paychex has an insurance agent division, and they wouldn't even write these plans.
Wow.
Why not? Because it was so much work. And so I thought, if I can use technology to automate the work, if I could form a relationship with someone at this JUA office, if I just knew Betty Sue or whoever was running that department, then I could make this the centerpiece of my business. Now, it's a 6-month licensing process to get licensed for workers' comp if you do like an online class like I did. So I signed up, I started this class, and I was about 3 months in when Maria looked at me and said, I hate living in Florida.
Oh.
She said, I'm going to go home to Virginia. Are you coming with me?
Wow.
Now, in her defense, her life, she was doing all kinds of things in her whole life I've been not talking about. We moved to my sales territory to make my job easier because I was making more money than her. And she decided to go back to school to become a nurse.
So she sacrificed for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was becoming a nurse, and we were living in the middle of nowhere. We could not find people under the age of 50 to be friends with. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. We went to a young married couples class at the church we were visiting. Like, hey, we'll find some young married couples like us in our 20s that just got married. The other two couples that came to the class were both in their 60s. And that was, we're young at heart. We're freshly remarried. And we said, we have no friends here. We're alone. And so that's what drove Maria to say, I can't live in isolation for your business idea. And I respect that. And so I said to Paychex, I need to go back to Virginia. I said, could you transfer me to Virginia? And they said, well, you're doing so well here. You've never had anyone. That territory has been an underperforming territory for years. You're doing great. Why don't you wait a few years and then we'll think about transferring you? And I said, here's my 1 week notice. And I called ADP and they offered me a job on the spot. They said, yeah, you want to do the exact same thing for us? You're a top performing sales rep. Come on over. Right. And so I packed up my bags and we were moving to Virginia. And in that process, a friend of mine from Paylocity or a friend of mine from Paychex who was interviewing at Paylocity said, look, this company's not for me. They're all techie, but you're into tech. These guys are a tech-based version of payroll. Why don't you talk to this recruiter? And that, I ended up being the best deal of my life. I ended up getting paid essentially double the amount of money I was making to do half as much work. I mean, that's the reality of moving up in sales to a bigger product. One sale is the same amount of work, but it's double the commission because it's a bigger sale.
Yeah.
So, that was a really great move for us. And I ended up being their first rep in the state of Virginia. They didn't have any other people. Luckily, I had found Paylocity at the right time because Paylocity was at the point where they were looking for warm bodies in all 50 states.
Yeah.
So when I interviewed Steve Sarowitz, the founder of Paylocity, was actually one of the people I interviewed with. And I remember they flew me to Chicago to meet with the founder. And I was employee number like 300 something. And I sat down with Steve Sarowitz, and he was sitting at a computer. And he said, where do you live? And I said, well, we're going to be moving to the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. And he said, hang on. And I watched him go to wikipedia.com and he go to the list of the top 50 largest city metro areas in the United States. And he's scrolling down and he's going, got one. Oh, Hampton Roads, Virginia. We don't have a rep there, and it's a huge metro area. Well, great. Any questions for me?
Wow, he just harped on
no.
Yeah.
And they hired me. And so, sometimes, and I actually later in life, I was interviewing for another job, and I said, I think I'm the luckiest man alive because I keep falling into opportunities that I feel like I don't deserve. And the guy who worked for, I won't go into his company, but he looked at me and he said, well, you make your own luck, right? The reality of being lucky, a part of that is I'm not going to lie. Like a part of me, if I wasn't born to the right parents, if I didn't have the right natural drive or the right thing, there's things that I can't control that has led for me to be financially successful.
For sure.
But I think about how when I was a kid and we'd go fishing all the time because you have the fish poster behind you. And, my father, I don't like fishing very much, but I loved being around my father. And I wanted to be on that boat with my dad so I could bond with him. And so as a 5 and 6 year old kid, I just wanted to go blah, 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 blah. I talk a lot. So blah, blah, blah. I wanted to talk to my dad. And he would say the same thing to me over and over again. You're not going to catch any fish if you don't have your pole in the water. If you don't have your lure in the water, you're not going to catch any fish. And a lot of what I do as luck is getting that lure in the water, putting as many fishing lines out there as you can and waiting for one of them to get a bite. Because during my time at Paylocity, I had success there because it was a sales job and I was driven. But at the same time, I had a lot of failures behind the scenes of things that we tried and failed. My insurance company, the idea fell apart because you can't get a license to sell insurance in Florida if you don't live in Florida.
Wow.
So it was just done. The end.
Interesting.
Yeah. And by the way, if anybody listening wants to steal that idea, by all means, give me a call. I'll give you all my homework on it. You can go do it.
There you go.
Tidbit. I don't know if it's still a viable idea, but it was back then. The other side of this was I launched a bunch of fun little companies. I was telemarketing into these corporate offices, pounding the phones. And what I discovered was it got easier over time because I had the extensions of the people I needed to talk to. And they would say, call me back in 6 months. Well, I was there 6 months later. So 6 months later, I didn't call the front desk and ask for Betty Sue. I just dialed Betty Sue's extension and she picked up because she didn't remember my phone number, So I said, this is genius. I could make so much money if I had a list of phone extensions for different executives. And I said, well, there's got to be an army of salespeople calling these people that have that information. So I registered a website. I want to say it was called, I'm terrible at names. I could open it up on my computer. It was connectmeplease.xyz because .com was not available. Connectmeplease.xyz. That website's long dead. But the idea was you could go type in any company name you wanted. And if you had someone's phone extension, you type in their name, their title, the phone extension, and maybe an email address if you had it for that contact person, and you submitted it. And then later on, when you needed someone's phone extension, you go to that website, you type in their name, and if an entry existed, you could see all the different extensions and emails that people had put in for that person. And if you went down the list and called them, you would say, yes, this one worked for me, or no, it didn't. And it would sort based on how many people had recently said that this phone extension worked for me. And I would make money by having advertisements from Google on the left and right sides of the search result page. That was my genius idea. I started the website. I went out and I bought a database of phone numbers, extensions, and emails for executives in my area. I spent maybe $1,000 on that. It was out of my own pocket. And I put this website up and I started populating it. And I found two problems. One, I couldn't get any of these advertising companies to let me place ads on my website. I don't know why they kept rejecting my application. So that was a problem. I wasn't making any money, but that's fine. Build it and they will come. Two, my database was garbage and it wasn't getting better very quickly. Like my work was good, but like, it wasn't growing very fast. So I just kind of left it out there and then it eventually died off of natural causes. I just got tired of paying for the web hosting, I had to set
information that you got from the company for $1,000, like emails, phone numbers, was still good information. And how many did you get? Did you get like 1,000 emails, 5,000 emails? Like, how did that work?
I want to say it was like a good number. It was like 15,000, I want to say, but it was mostly garbage. I mean, it was a mix. Yeah. It was good enough, but it wasn't like a list I'd telemarket down. Yeah. I wouldn't call on that list. And because like I was trying to sell to salespeople who weren't just selling to HR departments. So it was a mixed bag.
When you got to that point, through those different kind of inceptions and ideas, what got you to Astra Payroll?
Yeah. Well, essentially, and I'll just touch on some of the other failed ideas. I won't go into the story because I know we're going to run out of time because I talk a lot. But like one of the other ideas,
John, that's the point.
Well, so one of the ideas was an idea called Sale Mail, SALE mail. And the idea was online dating for advertisers. So you're going to get ads blasted at you anyway. What if you made a dating profile for yourself, but instead of what kind of person you're romantically interested in, you put what kind of products or you fill in a profile on yourself and you opt in to get ads emailed to you. And at the bottom of every email that gets advertised to you would be a code field. Type in this code to redeem your sale mail points. So you would say at the bottom, 50% off JCPenney would be your code for that email. And then you would type that in on the sale mail website and you would get 50% of the ad revenue that they paid to me would go to you.
Wow.
So, I mean, it worked out where you could make a quarter per email, 25 cents per email. Imagine every morning you wake up and you just get a quarter. And then after a couple of weeks, you've got, $25 and you can redeem it for an Amazon.com gift card. And meanwhile, I did nothing except sell ads and I'm making, that was the plan. And it's one of those things where to get that to be, it's another chicken and egg problem, right? Because now I had this baseline profile. What I needed to do to make that successful was I needed to become a venture capitalist. I need to go out, I need to find investors, and then I need to pound the streets of New York, put ads everywhere, sell mail, easy money online, whatever. I need to communicate to the world this product and get advertisers in tandem and get, that's what I need to do. At the time, I didn't know that, right? So at the time, I'm thinking small. And when I found someone who did know that, and they told me that, and they told me how much money it was going to take to really do an advertising blast in New York City and get our first group of users, and how much money I had to raise, and how I didn't know who to call. And by the way, at the same time, I was making the best money I ever made in my life doing sales for a company. And what I did at that time was I said, it is the opportunity cost to do this idea requires walking away from stable income.
Yep.
And I wasn't willing to do it. And so it died. So with Astra Payroll, what happened was I spent more time, and then we talked about the half suit, but then the half suit happened. But then, we get to the point where I'd been at Paylocity 7 years, the manager that they hired, this is not a slight at the manager, but the manager they hired for me at the end, I didn't get along with. We didn't see eye to eye, and I was burnt out because I was doing the same thing day after day. I was making good money doing it, but I was losing my excitement for the project. It was no longer this scrappy payroll company that no one ever heard of changing the world. It was one of 3 big payroll HR companies. It was another publicly traded company. We were becoming commoditized in the new sector. The new sector was tech-based payroll, but now there were competitors there. So now you're just like the other guys, and now we're just talking price was the idea.
The bottom.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe that to be true about Paylocity. I have a ton of respect and a lot of stock there, so I want them to be successful. But, we got to the point where the exciting part of that job had gone away, and now I was just doing boring sales.
Yeah.
And And so I was looking for the next thing to go to. I actually interviewed with some startups out of California. One was called Glint. I was so excited. I got to the final stage of the interview. They called me out to California, and I did this big interview, and I did a big pitch, and I thought it went great. And then they called me and said, well, it ends up the daughter of one of the founders took your job. And then the next day, I look online. They were so swamped. They were so busy. I couldn't figure out why they were so busy. Found out they were being acquired by LinkedIn. And the stock options they were going to give me, if they had hired me, would have been worth just millions of dollars. And I was so mad. I was just like, oh, I missed out on this huge opportunity.
One of the first times you weren't in the right place at the right time.
I was not. I was unlucky.
Yeah, for the first time in this conversation. Yeah.
And so I asked my father, who's been a business coach to me, I was like, I want to start a business. I keep trying these crazy ideas. And he looked at me and he said, start a payroll company. I mean, you've been doing payroll for years.
Sage advice. Insane. Sage advice.
I said, that's insane. I don't know anything about payroll. And so what I actually did leading up to that conversation was I decided to do a lifestyle. I've been doing this Gazelle business strategy. Let's get something that'll be huge. And I said, that's a mistake. I looked at there's a company, there's a local payroll company in Virginia Beach who you'll know if you live in the area, if you search for 2 seconds. They're very successful. They probably got 10,000 clients. They're 10 employees. And they've offered me a job before. And I said I wasn't interested. But they offered me a residual, which, okay, I could sell a bunch of clients and then stop selling and keep making money.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. But then if I quit or get fired, that revenue stream goes away. I don't have ownership of those clients, right? So I went to them and I said, can I do that offer, but build in like a golden parachute where you can't? And they looked at me and they said, oh, it sounds like you just want to own a payroll company, And I looked at those guys and I looked at their website and I saw that every year they take their employees out on their company yacht. And then I realized that they own a company yacht.
Yeah.
And said, okay, they might not have the biggest company, but they're making some money, right? And so I went to a couple other payroll companies up in Richmond and Williamsburg there's all these little payroll bureaus. And I asked them, can I work for you, but make a residual and have protection? And they all looked at me and said, sounds like you just want to start a payroll company. And when your competitors are looking at you saying, you need to do X, you kind of start to listen.
They saw what your dad saw and they saw it. And then eventually, it trickled down to you realizing it.
Yeah, I guess I got to give it a try. So I launched Astra Payroll Services. And I said, well, I don't want to get in trouble with the non-compete. And I said, we don't need the money to live right now. We can go a couple years and not make a dime and be okay because of my success and our savings up until this point. And I mean, this is personal here. We talked to a marriage counselor at one point because, I think every couple at some point has to zoom out and talk about what's happening.
You should and I'm a big believer in therapy and self-work, and you should actually be going to therapy before you need it. That's where most people need to be, because most people go to therapy when there's a problem. Most people go to therapy when they need to fix an issue. But if you go to therapy before a problem or an issue arises, a lot of times you can circumvent that whole situation.
Well, and what happened for us is it was really my fault, because what happened was I was getting so tied up with work. And then, now I'm burnt out and I want to play video games. Relax. I was not, they talk about this concept of, being able to, have 3 light bulbs, work, relationship, and, your own self-energy. And, if you can only power 2 out of 3 at full power at any given time. And what was happening was I wasn't putting the work into having fun with my wife that she deserved. And that's something that is an ongoing struggle when you want to fire at all engines, all cylinders at all times. You can't do that.
Right.
And you just got to take a break and pay attention. So, I took some time, and what was interesting was the therapist we talked to had a really interesting piece of feedback. He said, when Maria was in college, when she went back to school to become a nurse, she didn't make any money for like 3 years, and you supported her. Well, now she has a stable job and you have this dream of starting your own business. Maybe it's time to flip that around, and maybe this will be your college. You're going back to college. So what was the amount of money you spent on that? What was the time you spent on that? Let's flip it over, do it that way. And that's kind of what we did. So I started Astra Payroll with, the idea that we can build it slow and steady. And the first thing I did was I underestimated how much work it was going to be.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I didn't realize that I had this P&L that I put together showing how much money I was going to make. And the pitch and I was pitching my wife on why this is a great idea. But the pitch to be successful and hit my goals required me to sell at the pace I sold when I worked for Paychex.
Right.
When I worked for a small payroll company and it was just me doing sales. And what I didn't realize is someone's got to actually do the payroll.
You got to do so much more when you run a business. Yeah, your time is completely squandered amongst multiple tasks.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up not hitting any of my goals.
Yeah.
I was spending all my time in operations. And in the 2 years that I've had Astra Payroll, I think every possible disaster that I can imagine has happened to my company.
It will. Yeah. Yep.
So just to give you a list of things that have gone wrong, right? One of the first things that went wrong is I decided to have my dad help as a salesperson, and then he had a massive heart attack and nearly died, right?
Did pass?
He did not pass. He lived. He nearly died.
Okay.
That was the end of his sales activity for quite a while with Astra Payroll. One of my vendors was a direct deposit vendor called Cachet, and we'll come back to that one. They went bankrupt. One of their clients issued a $60 million payroll, not me, another client, to one of their clients. And so the way ACH vendors work is when someone wants to do direct deposit through my company, we have to use a bank to move the money around. And this was the bank that payroll companies were being sold. They were the largest provider of ACH services to the payroll industry. And ACH is inherently risky. When I move money through the banking system, the money goes out. Let's say I want to pay someone effective Friday. I want the money to arrive on Friday. The money comes out on like Thursday and it arrives on Friday. I, as the payroll company, don't know if the guy had the money in the first place to pay for all of this until Friday.
Wow.
On Friday, I find out if I just sent money out without having it there. Now, if I get that call Friday morning, hi, your client didn't have the money for his $20,000 payroll. The next sentence out of their mouth is, you need to wire us $20,000 by 10 a.m. or we are freezing your account. Not a big deal if it's one client and you've got the capital to float it, and then you do a reverse direct deposit or you have the client wire the money, right? There's situations where you can work with these people to get it resolved. And it's so rare that if you have a lot of clients, you're probably not going to be hurt by it. You're okay. But what happened was Cachet's largest client sent out $60 million, didn't have the money. The bank called, their parent bank, Bancorp of America, calls Cachet and says, wire us $60 million. And they said, we don't have $60 million. We have an insurance policy, but it's going to take a week to process. And they said, that's fine. But for the following week, we're going to freeze your assets. Well, guess who's all of my clients' direct deposit funds were in escrow through their company that day. So luckily we were able to make do. We would cut paper checks, and I was driving from client to client, hand delivering paper checks off of my bank account because I needed to get them paid, and we'd already taken the money out of their employer's account. And I was listening to a podcast because that's what I do. And one of the podcasts was Planet Money, and they were talking about how blockchain technology is overblown. They said, oh, blockchain technology, everyone's talking about blockchain. You know, if you're a startup and you say blockchain, whatever, investors throw money at you. And I thought there has to be a company using blockchain technology to move payroll so that I don't get screwed like I'm being screwed right now. And so I got home from that and I started Googling blockchain payroll. And all I found were last mile companies that would pay the employees in real time using pay cards that were backed by blockchain, right? Well, that's great. But as a payroll company owner, I don't give two hoots about that if I'm bankrupt because the employer is the one that screwed me. So I found this company. So I said, who's doing institutional banking? Because that's a term that kept showing up during the bankruptcy filings for Cachet, was institutional banking. And that's where I found an article from Forbes about this bank, Signature Bank out of New York, that's doing institutional banking using Ethereum blockchain. And the idea is that they move money around internally at their bank using the Ethereum blockchain to just track the money movements. They're not using the Ethereum coin. They're using the engine to just track where the balances are. So they can move money around and they know, and because the money's all inside their bank, it's no big deal, right? This is all on, you can see that on their Forbes article. This isn't secret information. I said, well, we could modify this and make it a payroll tool, right? I mean, imagine if you get this ecosystem expanded and you could process payroll not on Wednesday, but on Friday afternoon at like 4:00, and your employees get paid 30 seconds later.
Yeah,
that'd be huge. And me, the payroll company, has no risk. If they don't have the money, it's a beep beep, transaction denied. My risk goes to zero. And by the way, the employer keeps their money 2 days extra. Or they could process payroll as usual on Wednesday, and then the employees maybe get paid a day early on Thursday because we know the money's there. We can hand them the money whenever we want, right? Or What if we used it for daily payroll? What if we said every day we're going to pay these employees at the end of their shift some percentage of their check because we could, right? The only reason you never did it before, why do we pay people 2 weeks later for work they did 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
Why? And the answer is because we've always done it that way. Because in the 1800s, when a farmer was out, they didn't get to sell the harvest until the end of the week, and they had to wait till the harvest was sold, and then they had the coins to pay them, right? Like it's an old legacy system that's only around because no one has thought we should change it. And now it benefits employers to a degree because I got to keep my money longer, sure, right?
Yep.
Why couldn't we challenge that?
Isn't it true that some states have like it's written into their law somewhere that they can or should pay you daily? Have you seen this?
Unfortunately, my expertise on this stuff gets fuzzy because I unfortunately, and this is my big problem as an individual, I have a lot of big ideas, but I am not. I'm the jack of many trades and the experts at very few, and so that's where I rely on other people's expertise to tell me if I'm doing things right.
Yeah.
So. Well, and what I ended up doing when I had this thought is the thing that I've done my whole life. I looked at the name on the article. They interviewed some guy, and I looked on LinkedIn and I found his full name. And then I called the customer service line for Signature Bank, and I said, "Oh, this is John. I want to speak to Greg." And I just got real quiet. And they said, "Which Greg?" "Oh, Greg Tamberlin." Right. And then a few seconds later, they transferred me to a voicemail, and I said, "Okay, well, they transferred me to the right place." Called back the next day, and Greg picked up. And I said, "I need to talk to you." And I gave him my little 30-second idea. And eventually, a month later, I found myself...
30-second idea sound like? Give us a little taste. What'd you say? So I'm Greg. What'd you say to Greg?
Okay, so I might have embezzled, or what's the word? Embellished. I might have embellished, not embezzled. I might have embellished a little bit. And the way I said it was, "Hey, I'm the owner of a payroll company here in Virginia, and we want to use your institutional banking product that you're in charge of for payroll. Can I talk to you about that? I'm a huge prospective client for you." Now, he doesn't know at the time that I've got like 20 clients,
Yeah.
I don't have much money to move. Like, this guy's moving billions of dollars for these giant internal conglomerates. And I'm like, but that was the thought. I was like, and I knew that if he would give me more time, I could explain how I want to bring other payroll companies.
Yeah. Get your foot in the door. Yeah.
You gotta get your foot in the door. I own a payroll company, and people hear, "Oh, it owns a payroll company. That's could be huge." I don't know. Let's hear them out. And so I ended up flying to New York, and I drew out on a dry erase board, and I did all this. And they looked at me and said, "This is really interesting. You should talk to our board of directors." And they got a couple of guys from the board of directors to sit down with me, and I couldn't believe I was sitting in that room. And then what they said to me? "We don't want to do payroll. Wow. We've seen we're a bank. We don't want to get into payroll." And okay, well, we'll keep thinking about it and we'll come back. And that was it. I kind of walked away. Then COVID happened and my company caught on fire. By the way, that happened too, right? COVID. Oh my God.
Right.
So COVID happened and we stayed afloat, but it was crazy. And I was still growing the payroll company and busy. And then what ended up happening was after I told them to wait a few months, I was frustrated. They sent me a compensation model, and I was like, "This isn't very exciting. I don't want to spend all this work helping them make money, but I'm not going to really make any money doing it." Because at the end of the day, I wasn't inventing anything. I didn't have any ownership of this. So I was like, why do I want to be involved? And I did some crazy things. During that hiatus, I thought, should I start my own bank to have ownership of this? Yeah. I joined a startup.
You found again when you tried to, you said it was like nearly impossible. Was it just a money thing, or they're just not really like, what was the roadblock there?
Yeah. So there's a great organization in Virginia called Startup Virginia that I was recommended to go to. And I was going to do this like a startup. I was going to do this like a true, let's raise capital, venture funds, all that stuff. And what I ended up doing was through 6 Degrees of Separation or whatever, I ended up getting connected to some bank executives at small regional banks and some folks that had started banks and sold them. And they all looked at me and said, "You're crazy." They said, after the 2008, banking crisis, a bank charter is required to start a bank. No one's getting them. No one. They used to issue hundreds a year. They issue like less than 5 now, and you're not going to get one.
Yeah.
Right. Your best bet is to buy a bank. Now, Jesse, if I asked you to go buy a bank, how much money do you think that's going to cost?
50 million. Yeah. Just a number.
Yeah. It's some insane number that I don't have, So I thought maybe I could, I basically, after a lot of conversations and trial and error, I found that my best bet, if I want to have any involvement in this, if I really believe the idea was going to have validity, the only way I'm going to be a part of it is through this other bank that's already at the table, right? And so, I came back to Signature and I said, look, I can't let this go. This idea is too good.
Yep.
I said, so I said, look, put me on a short 3-month contract, right? And the idea is pay me a very little amount. It was minimal, but just enough to be official, right? And I didn't run this by a lawyer. I didn't have anyone look at this with authority. I said, pay me this minimal amount and I'll start the conversations with payroll companies.
Yep.
And if it has traction, we'll come back. If it flops, it would have been fun. It was fun trying. And so the first meeting we get is with an executive at the largest publicly traded. I'm not going to name the company because I don't want to cross any lines here for non-disclosure. But it was one of the largest publicly traded payroll companies in America. Which was I don't know this guy. I called a friend of mine that used to work at that company, and he emailed his old manager. Who next thing you know, I'm getting an email from this executive guy saying, "Hi, I've been with the company 40 years, and I launched all these products. We're probably not interested, but we'll hear you out."
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Relationship.
And he,
man. Yeah.
Well, he told me no.
Yeah.
He shot us down, but why he shot us down was awesome. He shot us down. He said, look, this idea can make us millions of dollars, but we're turning down ideas that can make us tens of millions of dollars because we have ideas that will make us hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I'm sure a small payroll company would be interested in trying this out. We're just too big. And I said, that is great to hear.
Right. Yeah. Validation.
So,
right.
It was validation from a guy telling me, no, I'm not going to buy from you.
And from a guy that plays in a league of hundreds of millions currently, and he's already seeing your idea as, yes, it's viable. It's just not in our league right now.
Well, what he told me was the idea is worth millions.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
That's beautiful.
So we then, now we're in conversations with more than, I think between 5 and 10 different payroll companies, which is crazy that I got in front of that many in the first place.
Yeah.
And as of this past week, we've gotten to a longer term. We're still drying the ink on a longer term arrangement for me to be involved in perpetuity. And the idea is that, I'm going to help them design, using my industry experience as a payroll person and my sales experience to connect these people. We're going to design what this technology could look like. And we're literally going to do a few crazy things. We're going to potentially undermine the entire payday loan industry.
Oh, yes.
What would happen if you could go to your boss and ask for your money early and they could push a button and give it to you early without any interest?
Yep.
Right? Or if they did it automatically.
System, man, you're doing a noble cause, noble effort.
Yeah. We're also going to take off all the risk from the employer. We're going to lower the cost for doing this. We're going to get people paid earlier. There's so many things that make me excited about this. And at the same time, it's weird because, I didn't invent anything.
Yep.
And the way I look at it is my small payroll company, my goal is to keep my small payroll company and keep growing it. Right. And the idea is that's my long-term investment. And this is my short-term investment. Let's get this thing going. Let's get it raring. Let's get people excited about it. And then tip my hat and walk away.
Yep. They say the average millionaire has 3 to 5 revenue streams coming in at all times. I mean, if you're just creating revenue streams through different avenues right now, you have your long-term play with your business. I mean, eventually Warren Buffett says, if you have one income stream, you'll be working till you die. So if you have to do what you got to do, man, and you're doing great work with creating things and bringing things to the forefront and tying things together. You're really good at seeing how, I think bringing things together and implementing things is like a talent of yours, and making those, connecting those lines, dotting those things together.
Yeah. And obviously I talk a lot and there's so much more I could go on about, but I want to respect your time.
Yeah,
Jesse,
man, we got a part 2 coming up for sure. We'll get back on this here in the next couple of weeks, but congrats on the extended deal. I know a little bit about that just conversation wise, and just making sure that you're happy with it, man. If you're happy with it and you're helping people, I mean, what else is there?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And, everyone wants to make money, but I think what is always in the back of everyone's heads that's in sales that I've ever met is you want to have a positive impact on the world in some form or fashion. It's great that you can close a deal, but what's better for me than closing a deal is having someone come and say, you have made my life so much better by introducing me to this product. right? Especially when we sold HR technology, right? Oh my gosh, I spent so much time doing all this work, and you took that away from me and gave me just the parts of my job that I like, and you gave me that back. You've changed every day of my life that I go to work is better because I met you. And that's the stuff that wakes me up in the morning, gets me jazzed,
Leave the world a better place, man. And that's, that should be kind of everyone's ethos to a degree, is show up better in the world for themselves, the people around them, who they serve, their families. But I love it, brother. I'm excited to have a continuation of the conversation. Thank you so much. He's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful John Mason Smith. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T Show.